Out of all the natural world, I think the rose is the flower which speaks the most to the human soul, to the Western soul at least. There's the lotus, which speaks to the people of the East, but the rose is something that impresses us. It impresses us with its beauty and with its scent.
It's a flower that's always in fashion. There are 40,000 varieties of rose grown across the world. In France, these delicate blooms have their temple in the gardens of the royal abbey of Chaalis in Picardy.
With this little wild rose, you have this pale pink colour inside the flower, and as soon as you turn it over, it's got this deep, rich pink colour. It's a little bit of magic.
André Gamard is in charge of overseeing this very special rose garden, dedicated to some of the flower's ancient varieties. He designed its layout of geometric forms nearly 20 years ago. The garden boasts 100 different kinds of rose, with some dating back as far as the Middle Ages.
What's very interesting is the unfolding beauty of these old roses. It's the change in their colour as they grow. You have very vivid orange little buds, and over time they start to have apricot, then caramel tones, fading almost to ivory. It's like a painting. There are so many different shades. And in a modern rose, you never get these nuances. You just get the impression of a flower that's been painted. The rose is above all a French passion. Don't forget that in the 19th century, the French were mad about roses, and it was amateurs who, in their gardens and in their flower pots, came up with new varieties on their own. That meant that right up until 1914, France was the main global breeder of roses. At the beginning, it was just lots of hard work and inventiveness. No one really knew what it would all achieve, but we just kept on researching, and that's how some of the more interesting varieties were discovered.
The garden was created in the memory of Nelly Jacquemart André, the former owner of this estate, who died in 1912. The affluent art lover wanted to make the lush beauty of Chaalis a sweet-smelling antidote to what she called the ugliness of the world.
This one here is a Paul Noël, a rose from about 1900 or 1910. It's from the time of Madame Jacquemart André. It was these soft roses which were used to decorate pillars and columns. They were discovered roughly at the end of the 19th century, and they came from Japan. These are multiflora hybrids. They're a really fragrant variety, with a very fragrant tea rose perfume, very subtle, spicy and sweet.
During the 19th century, gardeners would experiment with crossbreeding varieties and shaping the rose to their liking.
Up until the 18th century, roses came into flower just once a year and were shipped here after botanical voyages, like the roses from China. It was then discovered that you could get roses that grew much taller. That's all led to a weakening of the genus. We're still doing far too much hybridization. We want blue roses, but that just makes no sense.
Every June for the past 15 years, 120 horticulturalists from across Europe display their latest blooms in the gardens of the abbey, like Jean-Lin Lebrun.
This one's called Moon Dew. It captures the drops of dew at night time. It's really fresh, very fragrant, a real little queen. The history of the rose begins with the wild rose bushes which were found by botanists and travellers who brought them home to their gardens, and so they began to spread mostly in Europe from the Middle Ages. It was first grown for its medicinal qualities, that was back in the Middle Ages, then for its perfume with the influence of the Damascus roses that were brought back after the Crusades. The rose then became an ornamental flower grown in gardens in the 19th and 20th centuries.
Every year at his nursery in the Pas-de-Calais region, Jean-Lin invents a new rose and always unveils it at Chaalis.
This one is a special little wonder that I'm proud of because it's one of my own creations. It's like a watercolor. You have to approach it very slowly and discover this corolla, which opened just this morning. It has these small pink brushstrokes of color on its petals. This rose came into flower overnight, and tomorrow there'll be 3 or 4 new ones as well.
Jean-Lin has worked for over 10 years on his latest creation, a climbing rose in shades of coral and fuchsia.
The most important thing for many people is the perfume. It's a modern, slightly fruity scent. It's a near-perfect rose. The work of its creator is to seek perfection, but never quite find it.